Hello there, virtual space hero community, and welcome to our today's episode. We are going to dive into a super exciting topic that I have been working on for the past year with one organization, and I'm really excited to have one of the leading experts with me, a talent advisor, when it comes about how do we hire for remote or hybrid organizations. So what was I doing with the organizations the organization that I worked with is we really revised the whole process, how they hire talent and how they look out for talent, because clearly now we are available to hire globally. And that means to think about how we do that, where we do that, and who do we want to attract? What kind of competencies do we need for the future of work, for new ways of working? And today I'm very happy that I have with me Radina, connecting from Ireland, who is a talent advisor, expert, and founder of Vox Advisory. Hi, Radina.
Hi there, Barbara. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for finding space in your calendar and accepting my invitation. We're talking today about a very hot topic, and I imagine that you are flooded as well by organizations that need to think about how to hire for remote or hybrid organizations. Let us know a little bit about your work, please, Radina.
Absolutely. So my background is global recruitment and human resources. I guess the last 12 years, I've been really focused on understanding the global landscape. I've had the chance to be on the agency side in executive search, but also on the company side, particularly in large American companies, the last 10 years. And 3 years ago, I decided to jump off the corporate ship and set up my own consulting firm, Vox Advisory. And I really wanted to work a lot with startups and smaller structures that are, to a certain extent, struggling to find their ground in terms of talent best practices, but also who want to adapt so that they're future ready. I guess this is another buzzword, future proof, future ready. And then COVID happened. So obviously, the last 2 years, it's been a bit hectic, to say the least, in terms of setting up the strategy for some startups that I've been working with globally. Absolutely. I've never had the chance to work with so many different types of structures and clients, all having very, very similar challenges. And the interesting piece is that this is not only for small structures, it's also for big companies, but we'll get there. It's really, really a lot about understanding talent management, development, and acquisition.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Radina, for directly jumping into the topic. So, if we talk about recruiting for hybrid organizations, I would love to know what is your advice, suggestion? How do you prepare managers, recruiters to effectively recruit for hybrid organizations in general? What is changing here?
That's an excellent question. Why? Because it's a lot more than just, oh, let's put the word hybrid or remote in our job descriptions. It's a full shift of the mindset of each and every team lead, manager, individual contributor. Everyone on the team needs to be very much aligned as to what we can make compromise with, what are the must-haves, and what are the nice-to-haves. Because it starts a lot before even realizing, oh, we need to hire another, let's say, programmer internationally or remotely, or we need to hire our next community manager that is going to look after EMEA. So it's about setting up the right expectations, working together on understanding what can really make sense here and now, and obviously discussing the timelines. What is realistic? Because when people hear remote and hybrid, they think, oh, we're going to have tons of applications. Yeah, sure, but are they all going to be high quality? So you still need to consider your own time frame. So I guess this is the beginning. It's mindset and expectations as with everything else.
This also brings me immediately to my second question. And this question came from Stephanie, one of our Virtual Space Hero community members. She wrote it to me before the LinkedIn Live. From a cultural point of view, because you already mentioned it is
Mm,
a shift in mindset. So, what do we need to consider if we look for new hires? So, the buzzwords that we hear out there, and also what my research showed is new ways of working is all about purpose driven. It is
mm,
about autonomy, flexibility, being intentional, but also like having a lot of freedom. How would
mm,
you consider that to be embedded when it comes
mhm.
to the hiring or looking out for talent process?
The culture piece is without a doubt this unicorn that everyone knows about, no one has seen really. And I love when people are talking, okay, how we can make sure that our culture doesn't suffer, or we find the right people that will embrace our culture, that will be a culture at, not a culture fit, which unfortunately comes with a lot of negative connotation. A culture at is someone that brings themselves to work. I'm not a fan of saying this is going to be your family, because ultimately work is work, family is family. And unfortunately, we had to blend those two a lot the last 2 years. But the culture piece is something that needs to be established, and it has to have strong roots in everything that the organization does, even before they make a decision to become fully hybrid or fully remote. Now, with that shift, it's important to also take into consideration the fact that not everyone would come with you on this journey. Not everyone would feel, oh, from office space, all of a sudden now I'm hybrid. I have to work, what, 3 days from the office, 2 days from home, but I can't work from home. I have, 2-year-old and 1-year-old who's going to look after them. Loads of conversations. And as you said, autonomy, flexibility, freedom. These are key words that would ensure your success in your hiring, without a doubt. But how do you demonstrate them? How
Mhm.
do you embrace them? How do you go above and beyond in ensuring that people feel happy and they really truly embrace your culture? It's not just saying, oh yeah, you can, have freedom. If your child needs to go to the doctor, of course you can take, a few hours off. That's not the conversation. It's about ensuring that people feel productive whenever, wherever they work.
Mhm.
And that is challenging. That's challenging for a lot of managers, because they feel culture is how we work together. It's the team fit, which is not the case. I think culture is something much more complex than that. It's also how you communicate, whether it's open communication, whether it's a bit more, written, asynchronous, and so on. So I feel you need to discuss the different pillars in regards to communication, in regards to the type of profile of hire, yeah, and also how you demonstrate the culture on a day-to-day basis, not the
Mhm.
big events, right? So I hope that makes sense. It's a lovely question, and thanks, Stephanie, for asking.
Thank you so much for your opinions on that as well. I think I want to pick up on one thing that you said, and it's all about this culture fit or culture add. So when we think about new culture or a different culture when it
Mm.
comes to a hybrid organization, what is the trend that you see? How do make organizations sure that the person is a culture add to their team? What are they
Well,
using? Any tests or tools, or what are they using when it comes to the hiring?
from a tools perspective, I've seen a bit of shift in regards to the type of assignments, in regards to the feedback. What I have personally noticed in terms of good practices, and unfortunately, I haven't seen a lot, and I understand that it's complicated. No one has really invented the hot water at this stage. But what I've seen from a good practices perspective is quicker turnaround and huge transparency. Transparency is something that, unfortunately, when it comes to hiring, is a bit tricky, right? Because ultimately, you kind of have to preserve the interest of the company, and you are a brand ambassador of this organization. So a lot of things cannot be said the way they are. However, from a transparency perspective, I've seen very good communication on the career pages about what the actual recruitment process would look like, what to expect, what is the usual timeline. So let's say from initial screen up until offer stage. A lot of companies decide to even showcase what are the packages. So not only what is the financial reward, but also what additional perks you have, and also if you are successful in a year time, how success looks like, which is important. These are important questions that each one of us needs to know about. And I really love this level of transparency. And even when they're rejecting people, they give a bit more constructive feedback, which is
Mhm.
so amazing. Every single candidate is very appreciative of that.
Yeah,
But again, I understand that it's not the case with every company, not yet.
not yet. Absolutely. When we talk about assessment, you already mentioned that
Well, that's the problem with technology nowadays. It doesn't serve us occasionally. I think that Barbara's connection must be a bit shaken. It's pretty windy and rainy here in Dublin, so I'm hoping that I'm not gonna be dropped out as well. But let's give her a couple of minutes to return back to us. But I guess if anyone is interested when it comes to different practices and not so much on the assessment piece, but more around steps in the hiring process, absolutely feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I'll be more than happy to direct you to some pages. I don't want to make advertisings here of different companies, but I would be more than happy to showcase some good stuff that I've seen. Hey, Barbara, welcome back.
hello there. Thank you very much. I ran out of coffee and I'm sorry for not notifying you, but I needed to get another coffee very quick. So,
Fair enough.
the last thing that I heard on your end, we were talking about assessment. I wanted to dive into digital and virtual competencies
Hmm.
because you were talking about assessment processes, they did
Yeah.
change. And my question would be, how do organizations
Mm-hmm.
assess, for example, digital or virtual competencies? Has that changed? Is it something that is being assessed or not at all? What is your experience from your practitioner point of view?
See, yes, to a certain extent, I've seen a bit of shift in terms of the types of questions, some role plays, some activities that are focused on understanding the capacity of the person working remotely. Also, some trials as well. So, let's say before you are actually hired, there is a bit of a trial for about, let's say, 2 weeks, where this is a paid trial, but it's an opportunity for both sides to see whether that would work or not, because some people might be working in a remote setup for the very first time now with COVID. So not everyone is really made for this kind of setup. So I've seen that, and it's pretty interesting as a process. In terms of actual assessments, to be honest with you, I've seen a lot of the traditional kind of psychometric tests. Of course, they are probably a bit more tweaked to cater to the needs of a bit hybrid or a fully remote kind of setup. That's not something new, though. It's not a huge innovation. Of course, it gives you certain profile of the person that is interviewing, but I'll be pretty cautious to rely only on these kind of assessments, because some people might be very well trained. I'm a psychologist, I can definitely manipulate these tests, and other times people are so stressed or something else is happening, and the results might not be super consistent. So I do feel that it has to be a combination still, from a the traditional kind of questions, the competency based questions, open-ended, hypothetical, a lot more hypothetical questions. How would you cope if something is happening with you right now and you weren't expecting it? Or let's say some kind of scenario based presentations that you have to come up on your feet and you have to basically present something.
Hmm.
Especially now with Zoom, you can share your screen and you can start doing things on tools like Miro or different types of dashboards. So it's a lot about blending different tools that can showcase the competencies, a mix of competencies of different candidates, of course, depending on the type of role.
Oh, fantastic! That already gives us a very good idea on on what could be happening when we hire for remote. But maybe let's go also one step back. We're already diving
Mm,
into the hiring process itself. Thanks
mm.
so much for your suggestions and your input here. But how and where do recruiters now search for talent if the talent pool suddenly became global? Do you see that they are struggling? Is it something that they're clear on what platform to go? For example, we have seen that LinkedIn just now, I think like a few weeks ago, was able to change that the job postings can be classified as remote, right? It happened like what, 3 weeks ago? So
Yeah.
2 years in a pandemic with a huge rise in remote jobs, and not only remote job offers, but also
Mm,
applicants looking only
mm.
for remote job. Just
Yeah.
now, LinkedIn adapted this possibility. So how are recruiters working on that end?
And you're totally right in saying that it is confusing for a lot of the recruiters and even for the hiring managers, because yes, of course, LinkedIn is a massive tool and great channel to promote different roles. However, I see a bit of a shift from the traditional job boards to a bit more specific ones. So I personally have noticed flex jobs, remotive, remote how, power to fly, which is a bit more focused on diverse hiring. Um, Now, with the expansion of looking for global talent, that doesn't mean you have to select only one or two channels. I think it's important to trial. Every company has very different goals, very different type of profile that would suit them, very different hiring style, and obviously values and culture, and of course salaries. So I think you need to experiment. I personally have found platforms like AngelList working very well for a smaller companies such as well as TechCrunch, for example, advertising in these more niche kind of websites and platforms. I found it a bit more beneficial because people who have similar interests would go there, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there is also another parallel conversation with hybrid, which is how we can diversify, how we can find interesting candidates that are already being checked or assessed, and they're further ahead in terms of their self-awareness, in terms of working remotely. So again, these platforms that I mentioned earlier organize different virtual career fairs as well, which can be a fantastic way to promote your brand, so from employer branding perspective, but it also gives you the chance to have, let's say, 20 tete-a-tete conversations a day with already kind of gathered talent, right? So on one side, I think you need to be proactive in finding your niche posting boards. On another hand, I also feel you need to find the right partners to collaborate with, so that they provide you access to talent that has been already vetted. I'm not a fan of this word, but technically that's the case.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it is very much trial and error.
Mm-mm. Okay, okay. Thanks. But you were sharing a lot of valuable platforms that are out there, and that, of course, have been growing a lot in the past years as well. So, in case you are looking out for remote jobs, or if you're offering a remote job, it definitely makes sense to look at those platforms, job platforms specifically focused on remote job opportunities. And if we move back now, so Radina, you were already talking a little bit about when it comes to the interview process. You were mentioning more scenario-based question, looking out for different digital virtual competencies during the interviews, or other sort of role plays that you were saying that recruiters became more creative to some extent.
Mhm.
Is there something else that changed when it comes to the recruiting process for a hybrid job or hybrid organization or virtual one?
Yes, and you're totally right. I'm happy to see that a lot of organizations have been a bit more innovative in their approach. I worked with a startup that basically had an AI boosted platform that allows candidates to interview candidates. How amazing is that? For high volume roles like customer support, for example, it's great to have this additional arm to help your recruiters. I've seen platforms that are helping with the CV as well, to be a bit more AI friendly, to be a bit more relevant from a structure point of view, because this is also tricky when it comes to reading CVs and selecting that. A lot of the applicant tracking systems, the large ones, have introduced different types of filters as well, and opportunities to gather data from your recruitment
Mhm.
cycle, which is becoming more and more the trend. It's not just the standard time to hire. It's a lot more about, okay, what's the consistency? Where do we get feedback most? What do we need to change? What's working well? What's our CSAT score? Another thing that I have seen and I personally really like is the change of the job descriptions. Oh gosh, it's so crazy that some like large multinational companies still are writing long, boring job descriptions. I don't
Mm.
understand that. And especially if you're trying to attract Generation Z, go on TikTok,
Yeah.
create a visual job description versus writing like paragraphs and paragraphs about how cool you are. The shift is also on this is how we support you in order to feel included. So inclusivity is a big part of the narrative as well.
Mhm.
And I've seen good advertisings like that, also showing the team that you're going to work with, the actual faces of the people you're going to interact with. So this stuff are bringing back the human element to a virtual world, and I really really love this kind of small nuggets of innovation.
Thank you so much for bringing that up. And I'm really happy to hear that inclusiveness or inclusivity is such a
Mhm.
big topic, because that is something that we need to really consider when it comes to hybrid work. And much of my work with organizations is about how can we as an organization be inclusive when it
Mhm.
comes to hybrid work, to include virtual workers, to be fair and equitable when it comes to information communication flow and so on and so forth. And these are big, big things out there.
Yeah.
Radina, you mentioned also the one applicants interviewing applicants. Help me understand what is going on there. I have no clue.
Yes, so this was unfortunately it doesn't exist at the moment yet, but it was a platform where basically you have very quick, like 5 to 10 minutes conversation with someone else that has applied for the same role. You don't see their name, you just have the video interaction, and you have a question in front of you, and basically you have to ask this question. So once you play the role of an interviewer, and then the other person is the candidate, and the next round is you being interviewed by someone else. So it's like a speed dating, but in a hiring setup. So you're all competitors, but you get the chance to practice. You get feedback on board. Plus, you obviously get selected or not for the actual interview process. So it's pretty interesting idea, and I'm really looking forward to see if there'll be anything like that. So it's not just traditional virtual or video interview, right? Another one that you can record yourself. This was really something else.
Wow, very, very exciting to hear. I think it sounds like really very innovative as
Yeah.
an approach. When it comes to interviews, so we were talking mainly about on-site or virtual interviews.
Mhm.
Have you already been involved into hybrid interviews where really maybe two interviewers or the applicant is on-site, the manager is connecting from somewhere else? So really hybrid situations in interviews or assessment centers, and what was your experience?
Not really in an assessment center yet, although I'll be very much looking forward to do that. However, yes, on a recruitment cycle, so in an interview, I've seen a hybrid model. Obviously, it was something that was rather a trial, right? It was by chance because the candidate was based where the actual company is here in Dublin.
Mhm.
So we were able to go, few of us, but then the rest of the team dialed in from different places. And one thing that we did in advance to prepare was that everyone everyone was wearing their branded shirt of the company, but they also brought something that they really love about the organization. So one thing, so they could either show it on a board or they can present it. So the thing was, you have to show it physically, and we gave them the chance to do like 5 minutes of introduction and showing this stuff before the actual interview. So not only that was a very different and friendly approach, it alleviated the stress from the interview, and the candidate was pretty fascinated. Wow, that's a culture that I want to work with. So it was absolute trial. We did it only once, but the feedback was amazing. So I guess it's not something to brag about from a statistic standpoint, but still it's a different practice.
Wow, I love to hear that. And I think it's so powerful if the team already joins, because this is even in very traditional organizations, I do not see that happening very often, to be fair.
Yeah.
And bringing an object, the example that you gave, super powerful. Love it. Love
Mhm.
it. Thanks, Radina, for sharing. So we are coming already to the end of today's discussion, but I need to ask you one more question. What comes after the decision for the new hire that was taken?
Mhm.
What comes afterwards? What's the next step?
So then the real onboarding starts the minute the person says yes to the offer. Then it's another animal and another big unicorn that has to take place there, because hybrid or remote onboarding is slightly less personal, right? I remember when I was at Airbnb, we always used to give tours of the actual building. I've seen 360 video reviews, or video kind of showcase of the office, which is still very nice. But I also believe that it's important to have some kind of a personalization, like a handwritten card from someone, or anything like that. So yeah, we can talk a lot about the onboarding, but I guess we need to set up another whole session on that.
Absolutely. But I think the point that you're making is already important to understand that when the hiring is done and maybe the contract is signed, it's super important to keep the connection and emphasize that human connection, particularly if we're in a hybrid or in a virtual context, so that we are
Yeah.
really able to establish that human connection and that the person doesn't feel, because the starting date could be in 2 months or could be even in 3 months whatsoever, and a lot of water flows down the river, as I would say in German. Not sure if that works in English as well, but a lot of
Mm-hmm.
water flows down the river in the meantime. So it's important to keep that connection afterwards as well. Thanks so
Yeah.
much, Radina. Many valuable insights. I definitely recommend you checking out Vox Advisory and connecting with Radina here on LinkedIn as well. It was a pleasure having you here, and I'm thanking you again for making the time on your calendar.
Likewise, thanks a million. It was a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Thank you, Radina. Fantastic. Thank you very much, everyone, also for your questions that you sent in beforehand. Be active. I know that not everybody can join live, that sometimes other things come in between. But so you sent me your questions beforehand. I always include them in the conversation. And don't forget also, the LinkedIn Lives are online here on LinkedIn, but they are also on YouTube. Check out our YouTube channel. You find them also. It also easily Virtual Space Hero on YouTube, and you can subscribe to the channel there and find all the previous conversations in one beautiful playlist. And with that, I'm saying thank you very much, community. It was fantastic again, a very insightful morning today for me here connecting from Argentina. I hope you're all staying well, and don't forget to become a virtual space hero. And with that, I'm leaving you and I'm seeing you next week. Bye.